Today's experience was sent to us by a sister. She was taken to hell and she met the prominent late pop star, Michael Jackson, and he told her a message that the world need to hear, especially Christians. Stay to the end to fully understand her experience. Hi, my name is Benedicta John. I was born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, in a home where faith was a central part of our lives. My parents were devoted Christians, deeply rooted in the teachings of the Baptist Union. From an early age, I was surrounded by the rituals of church life, Sunday services, Bible readings, and prayers. They wanted nothing more than for me to grow up walking in the path of the Lord. But as I got older, I began to feel disconnected from it all. While my parents' faith was unwavering, mine felt more like an obligation than something I truly believed in. My friends outside of church were different. They were fun, carefree, and always seemed to be having a good time. They didn't worry about church or Bible verses, and I found myself drawn to their lifestyle. It wasn't that I stopped believing in God entirely. I just didn't feel connected to the rigid, religious life my parents lived. The world outside seemed more exciting, and I wanted to be part of it. I started embracing a more worldly lifestyle. Parties, music, and anything that felt liberating. I was young, and I wanted to explore what life had to offer, even if it meant leaving my faith behind. As I transitioned into adulthood, my life took a different turn. I opened a large provisional shop right in the heart of Kingston. It quickly became my pride and joy, something I had built with my own hands. Running the shop was busy work, stocking shelves, dealing with customers, and managing the day-to-day operations. But it gave me a sense of independence and success. I was proud of what I'd achieved. But despite my focus on the business, my heart wasn't fully in it. What I really looked forward to were the social gatherings and events happening around the city. Kingston was always alive with something. A concert, a street party, or a new event to attend. I loved the energy of the crowds, the blaring music, and the chance to let loose. Secular music was a huge part of my life. Whether at home, in my shop, or out with friends, I always had the latest tracks playing in the background. It was like the rhythm of the city pulsed through me, keeping me connected to the lifestyle I had grown to love. On May 18, 2018, I made a decision that would change my life. I realized that I needed to make a change, a real, deep change. I couldn't keep living the way I had been, constantly chasing after things that left me feeling empty. That day, I repented of my sins and made the choice to be baptized. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to reconnect with the faith I had drifted away from for so long. I joined the same Baptist Union church my parents had been part of for years, the very one I had avoided throughout my youth. But even though I had turned my life back to God, it wasn't easy to fully let go of my old habits. I struggled, especially when it came to the secular entertainment I had loved for so long. The music, the parties, the events, they still pulled at me, tempting me to slip back into my old ways. I was trying to live a new life in the church, attending services regularly and even joining the women's fellowship. But part of me was still tied to the world I had known for so many years. The struggle was real, and though my heart was in a different place, the pull of my old lifestyle was hard to break free from. In 2020, everything in my life changed in an instant. Started out as a normal evening after closing my shop. I had just finished counting the day's earnings when my phone rang. It was an old high school friend I hadn't seen in years. We got to talking, catching up on life, and before I knew it, we had made plans to meet up later that night. We decided to head to a pub nearby. It wasn't supposed to be anything serious, just a casual night out to reminisce about old times. We laughed, had a couple of drinks, and for a moment it felt like old times. As the night wore on, I started to feel tipsy, and it was clear it was time to head home. I said my goodbyes and stepped out into the cool night air, ready to catch a taxi back home. As I walked through the dimly lit streets, I noticed two men walking behind me. At first, I didn't think much of it, but something about the way they kept pace with me put me on edge. Before I had time to react, they were on me. They demanded my handbag, which held all my earnings from the shop that day. Instinctively, I resisted. In that split second, one of them pulled out a gun and shot me in the leg. The pain was instant, but before I could even scream, they struck me on the head. Everything went black. It was in that moment that my life took a turn I could have never expected. When I regained consciousness, I wasn't in the streets of Kingston anymore. Instead, I found myself in a peaceful, empty space. It was so calm, almost surreal, as if the noise and chaos of the world had been completely silenced. There was no pain, no fear, just an overwhelming sense of tranquility. As I stood there, I noticed something incredible. A golden city began to descend from the sky. The gates were magnificent, shining with an otherworldly brilliance. They seemed to glow, drawing me closer. I could hardly take my eyes off them. Everything about the scene was peaceful and yet awe-inspiring. The gates were guarded by angels, their presence powerful and commanding, yet somehow comforting. Before I could fully grasp what was happening, one of the angels approached me. He didn't speak at first, but I felt his intention clearly. He was here to guide me somewhere. Without hesitation, I followed him. The surroundings began to shift as we moved, and soon, the peace I had felt began to fade. I found myself descending into a dark, oppressive place. The warmth of the Golden City was replaced by a cold, chilling atmosphere. I realized, with a growing sense of dread, that the angel was taking me to hell. The contrast from where we had come from was overwhelming. It was a place of intense suffering and torment, unlike anything I could have ever imagined. As the angel guided me deeper into the darkness, the peacefulness I had felt vanished completely, replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. The air around me grew thick with the sound of screams, horrific, agonized cries that pierced through the oppressive silence. All around me, I could see souls writhing in unbearable torment, their faces contorted in pain, their bodies twisted and broken by relentless suffering. It was as if the very essence of despair was all around me. The scenes were unbearable. I watched as demons, hideous and cruel, tortured the souls in ways I could barely comprehend. Flames roared from the depths, and there was no escape, no relief for those trapped there. Every face I saw was filled with hopelessness and agony, a never-ending cycle of suffering that seemed to stretch for eternity. As I moved through this nightmarish place, my heart stopped when I recognized someone in the midst of it all. Among the countless tormented souls, there was one face I knew: Michael Jackson. He was surrounded by demons, their claws digging into him, their laughter cruel and heartless as they tormented him. It was a shocking, heartbreaking sight. To see someone so iconic, so famous in life, reduced to this level of torment shook me to my core. As I stood there, frozen by the sight of Michael Jackson in such unbearable agony, the angel stayed close by my side, silently observing, filled with regret that seemed to deepen his torment. Though he didn't speak directly to me, I could feel his confessions, his pain, his regrets, as if they were being laid bare for me to witness. He spoke that one of his deepest regrets was never repenting or accepting Jesus when he had the chance. In life, he had been surrounded by fame, fortune, and all the distractions that come with it. He had heard the message of salvation many times, but he always pushed it aside, caught up in his world. Now, in the depths of hell, he was consumed by the knowledge that it was too late, that all the moments he could have turned to Christ were gone. The weight of that missed opportunity crushed him, and I could feel the desperation in his cries, knowing that there was no going back. As the demons continued their cruel torment, it became clear that Michael was also tortured by the fact that he had not used his incredible talents to glorify God. He spoke that he had spent his life captivating audiences, entertaining millions, but he had done it for his own glory, not for God's. He had the platform, the reach, and the ability to make a real difference, but instead, he had focused on fame and worldly success. Now, that choice haunted him. The most gut-wrenching moment came when he spoke of how much he regretted the surgeries he had undergone, the endless attempts to change his appearance. In hell, his body was twisted and disfigured, a reflection of the inner turmoil he had carried. He had sought perfection, altering the face and body God had given him, never content with who he was. Now, he realized that in trying to change himself, he had rejected God's creation, showing a lack of gratitude and contentment. His regret was overwhelming. He wished he had embraced who God made him to be, instead of chasing a false image of perfection. As I watched, the demons shrieked in delight, never giving him a moment of peace. They clawed at him relentlessly, interrupting his confessions with violent attacks that left him unable to speak further. It was clear that in this place, there was no mercy, no rest, and no hope of redemption. As I stood there in utter disbelief, watching Michael Jackson's torment unfold before my eyes, the demons around him seemed to grow more aggressive. They shrieked and laughed in twisted delight, never allowing him a moment of relief. Every time he tried to express his regret or speak further, they would strike him down with brutal force. It was as if they took pleasure in silencing him, ensuring that his cries for mercy would never be heard. The more he tried to confess, the more vicious their attacks became, leaving him writhing in unbearable agony. The scene was almost too much for me to bear. I could feel my own heart breaking, overwhelmed by the horror of what I was witnessing. Tears welled up in my eyes as I watched the relentless torment, knowing that this suffering had no end. It wasn't just the physical pain. It was the weight of regret, the finality of missed chances, and the unbearable burden of knowing there was no escape. Suddenly, the angel at my side turned to me, and in an instant, everything began to shift. I felt myself being pulled away from the horrors of hell, as if an invisible force was lifting me out of that dark, tormented place. The screams and flames grew distant, and the oppressive heat began to fade. I didn't want to look back. The weight of what I had seen was too much to carry with me. As I ascended from the darkness, I felt a rush of emotions: relief, sadness, confusion, swirling inside me. Then, just as suddenly as I had left, I found myself back in my body. My eyes opened, and I was lying on the ground, in the very spot where I had been attacked. I was no longer in the streets of hell, but back in the living world, alive, with some medical personnel attending to me. I have this to say: witnessing the torment I saw, especially that of Michael Jackson and the countless other souls in hell, has forever changed my perspective on life and eternity. If there is one thing I have come to understand with absolute clarity, it is this: there is no repentance after death. Once we leave this world, our choices are sealed, and for those who die without Christ, there is no second chance. The agony, regret, and despair I witnessed cannot be undone. As believers, we must take this reality seriously. We cannot be passive when it comes to evangelism or praying for the lost. We are surrounded by people who, just like Michael, may be living in ignorance of the eternal consequences of rejecting Christ. We cannot afford to stay silent or complacent. Every soul matters, and time is running out. We must pray. Pray fervently for the souls of those who are still caught in sin, blinded by the temptations of the world. Pray that their hearts will be softened and that they will have the chance to hear and accept the gospel before it's too late. Our prayers can make a difference, but we must be diligent and persistent in lifting up those who do not yet know the truth. And we must act. Evangelism needs to become a priority in our lives, not just something we do occasionally. Every opportunity we have to share the message of salvation is a chance to rescue someone from eternal torment. It is not just the responsibility of pastors or church leaders, it is the calling of every believer. The souls of countless people are hanging in the balance, and we cannot afford to waste any moment. Let us be bold in sharing the gospel, passionate in our prayers, and committed to seeing souls saved. Hell is real, and eternity is forever. We cannot allow ourselves to forget that. All right, friends, this brings us to end of today's experience. Kindly like and share this video with your friends and families. Kindly subscribe to our channel and turn on your notification bell icon to be the first to get updated anytime we upload a new experience sent to us. Remain blessed.